My name is Grace, and I live with my son Leo in a small gray house on Willow Street in Denver, America. The porch sags a little like a tired smile, and the front door sticks when it rains, but it is ours and it holds us. I bought it with a modest down payment and a long string of careful choices, packed lunches, thrifted furniture, and the decision to do this life my way. Most nights, after Leo is asleep, I sit at the kitchen table and listen to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint traffic on the avenue, and I feel the house breathe with me, steady, stubborn, alive. The email came on a Monday afternoon, just as I was folding warm towels that smelled like lemon. The subject line from my dad, Richard, said Thanksgiving plans, which seemed harmless, almost kind. I opened it and read the words twice before they settled into meaning. Being a single mom is a family disgrace. You're not invited to Thanksgiving. It was like he had pulled the floorboards an inch from under my feet, not enough to fall, just enough to wobble and know he could. I stared at the fridge where Leo's crayon picture of our house hung crooked by a magnet. 2 blue windows, a bright red door, and 2 stick figures holding hands on green grass. 5 minutes later, another message pinged. It was from my sister, Molly, and her husband, Ben. Their note was smooth and tidy, like a press shirt. They wrote that they supported Dad completely, that families needed standards, that they hoped I would reflect on my choices. As if my choices were not sitting 2 feet away building block towers and asking for another apple. The house felt suddenly louder. The tick in the pipes, the click of the heater, my own breath. I raised my hands over the keyboard and felt a kind of cool steadiness wash through me, the calm that rises right before you tell the truth. I replied to Molly with 4 simple words. Then you won't be there. My finger hesitated for half a heartbeat, and then I hit send and watched the message fly into the bright, indifferent air of the internet. After that, I opened my budget spreadsheet, the one with pale yellow cells and neat notes, and I canceled every single payment I had lined up to keep our family's tradition afloat. The $3,000 venue deposit in Cleveland? Gone. The $1,200 meal costs I had promised to cover for the big table and the extra pies? Canceled. Even the $650 I had agreed to send for Molly's car repairs, money I had planned to tuck into her glove box with a little note that said, for safer miles, I withdrew that, too. I felt like I was tugging back threads I had sewn into a blanket that never kept me warm. Ben texted a minute later. We already ordered the parts. Can you please still send this $650? I looked at the message and at my own reflection in the black corner of the screen. I typed, I'm not funding people who call me a disgrace. He sent a long paragraph about responsibility and keeping commitments. I turned the phone face down on the table and filled a glass with water. Through the window, I could see our narrow patch of yard, a stubborn stripe of winter grass, and Leo's blue ball caught in the fence. This is my life, I thought. This is my house. This is my money. This is my voice. When Leo woke from his nap, he asked if we would still have pie on Thanksgiving. Yes, I said, and I meant it with my whole chest. After dinner, I tucked him into bed and read the same picture book twice because he asked me to, and then I stood in the hallway and looked at the map of Europe on the mantle. I keep it there to remind myself that the world is wide and that a woman can draw new borders without leaving her street. I am in America, I thought, my country, my home, my rules. The old script, be quiet, pay up, smile, crumbled like dry leaves. Before I slept, Dad called. I let it ring. I listened to the voicemail once, calm as winter light. He said I was overreacting, said family comes first, said the venue mortgage and the meal costs were bigger than feelings. I whispered to the dark, I am family. I set my phone on the nightstand, felt the house settle around me, and chose a beginning over a seat at a table that had already pushed me out. On Tuesday morning, the house felt like a person who had overheard everything and chose to stay kind anyway. Sunlight slid across the kitchen floorboards, soft and yellow, and the kettle gave its small, faithful sigh. I packed Leo's lunch, peanut butter sandwich, carrot sticks, a square of chocolate wrapped in foil like a secret, and set his sneakers by the door. He patted in with bed hair and announced that today he would run the fastest lap at recess. Good, I said. Run for both of us." He laughed and tried to tie his laces himself, tongue poking from the corner of his mouth in fierce concentration. The house seemed to lean closer, as if rooting for him too. After drop-off, I drove back through our Denver streets, past the bakery where the windows always fog and the shop on the corner that sells secondhand lamps. The sky was the color of a clean plate. When I stepped inside, the house met me with its quiet. I sat at the table and opened my laptop. There were new emails, a terse note from my dad, Richard, asking for clarity on the canceled payments, and a longer one from my sister, Molly, promising we could talk it out if I restored the $3,000 venue deposit and the $1,200 for meals. She didn't mention the $650 for car repairs at all. I pictured Molly and her husband, Ben, in their Cleveland kitchen, composing sentences like a budget, line by line. Nothing wasted, feelings excluded. I wrote back to Dad first. I told him the numbers again. In the clear light of morning, $3,000 for the hall, $1,200 for food, $650 for the car. I told him I had canceled each one because I won't pay for a chair at a table that refuses my name. Then I said the thing I had not said before, that I love him, and I am done paying for that love in dollars. I signed it simply, Grace, and hit send. My heart beat steady, like footsteps on a dependable road. The house, and I got to work. I wiped the counters, pressed a loose nail back into a stair tread, and oiled the sticking hinge on the pantry door. I made a list for Thanksgiving at home. Turkey, potatoes, cranberries, cream, cinnamon, flour. I set a hard limit, $180, and challenged myself to keep it under $150. I will stretch dollars the way women have always stretched dough. The thrift store frame on the mantel caught the light, and the old map of Europe glowed like a promise. I traced a fingertip along the North Atlantic and thought of the space between continents, water wide enough for reinvention. Naomi called during lunch. She lives in Chicago and has a voice that sounds like warm bread. "You," she said, "are not a disgrace. You're a lighthouse." I told her about the emails and the silence that came afterward, a heavy quiet with corners. She said, "Then fill the quiet. Invite people who see you." We made a plan for a small table at my place. She couldn't make the trip this week. Work, money, life. But she offered to order flowers and send $50 toward the groceries. I told her it wasn't necessary. She said it wasn't payment, it was a vote. I accepted the vote and wrote flowers on the list, even if the flowers would arrive in a cardboard box and need their own small rescue. In the afternoon, Ben texted again. He had receipts now, photos of brake pads, and a mechanic's invoice. "It's not personal," he wrote. "It's just the car." I looked at the total, $648.72, so close to the number we'd discussed it felt like a dare. I told him I was sorry the timing hurt, and that my money is for people who don't call me names, even by proxy. He replied with a single period, that pretended to be nothing and meant everything. I set the phone down and listened to the house breathe. When Leo came home, we baked cornbread in a dented pan that once belonged to my grandmother in America, the woman who taught me that love is yeast. It rises when fed. Leo stirred while I measured, and we talked about what we were thankful for. He said, "Pie and our house and you," in that order. I said, "You and heat and friends who vote with money and flowers." We ate warm squares with butter that skated across our plates and left bright trails. After bedtime, I took a slow walk through the rooms, turning off lights, touching door frames, checking the lock twice. The porch creaked its familiar complaint. The living room held its map, and its quiet. In the bedroom, I paused at the window. Denver lay out there like a quilt, stitched in streetlights. Somewhere to the east was Cleveland, and the hall that would host a Thanksgiving without me. Farther east, the cold blue ocean. Farther still, the worn paper edges of Europe. I thought about borders again, the kind we draw and the kind we cross. I thought about the price of a seat and the worth of a voice. I slid into bed and felt the mattress hold my weight. The house gave one last settling sound, a soft wooden exhale. Tomorrow I would shop. I would keep the total under $150. I would roast and mash and stir, and I would set 2 plates, mine and Leo's, with the care of a ceremony. I would light a candle for every woman in America who learned the difference between a bill and a bond. I would pay in dollars, yes, but I would bank in something stronger. And the house, kind conspirator, would keep the ledger of what stayed and what left. By Wednesday, the house and I were in step, like 2 steady walkers keeping the same pace down a clear Denver sidewalk. I woke before Leo, brewed coffee, and spread my budget notebook on the kitchen table. The numbers looked small and brave in my neat handwriting. $150 for groceries, no more. $20 set aside for a second-hand tablecloth if I could find one. $15 for candles and paper napkins that felt like a celebration. The canceled payments still hovered in my mind. The $3,000 venue deposit in Cleveland, the $1,200 for the meal, the $650 for Molly's car, but now they felt like closed doors I had locked on purpose. I touched the old map of Europe on the mantle as I passed, the way some people touch a railing for balance, and I told the house out loud, "We make our own feast." I bundled Leo into his coat and drove to the market, the one on Colfax where the produce is stacked in hopeful pyramids. We shopped like strategists. I weighed a small turkey and chose the cheaper one, a few ounces less, a few dollars saved. Potatoes went into the cart, cream, a can of pumpkin, flour, butter, cranberries that snapped when I touched the bag. Leo negotiated for a tiny chocolate turkey for $1.99, and I said yes because he had carried the basket without complaint, and because saying yes is its own kind of wealth. At checkout, the total flashed up, $138.44, and I felt a quiet victory swell in my chest. We had stayed under the line, and the line held. Outside, the air was cold and honest. I loaded the trunk and checked my phone. A new email from Dad waited like a dark cloud. He wrote that traditions mattered more than hurt feelings and that I had embarrassed the family by canceling what I'd promised. I stood there in the parking lot with a sack of potatoes in one hand and the other hand clenched around the phone, and I realized I wasn't embarrassed. I was tired, yes, and sad, yes, but I was not ashamed. I typed a reply in the plainest words I could find. Being a single mom is not a disgrace. Saying it is one. Leo and I will host ourselves in America, in our house, with our money. If you want to know us, you know where we are. I pressed send and felt the day brighten by a small, stubborn degree. Back home, I cooked ahead. The kitchen fogged with steam. The windows wore soft halos. I simmered cranberries until they burst, stirred in sugar, and watched the sauce jewel into a glossy red. I cubed bread for stuffing and left it to dry on a sheet pan, sprinkled with thyme. Leo sat on the floor with measuring spoons and built a silver city. When the timer rang, he announced that his city had a rule. Everyone could cross the bridge, but no one was allowed to yell. I told him I liked that rule and that I was building a world with similar laws. For a moment, I thought about December and the word I had circled, brave, and I let myself picture a quick train to New York, a museum with wide stairs, a hot pretzel in one hand and my son's mitten fist in the other. The map of Europe watched us from the mantle, a witness to a house practicing freedom. In the afternoon, Molly called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Her voice was bright at first, then brittle. She said it wasn't fair to leave her with the hall problem in Cleveland. She said Ben was stressed about the car. She said Dad didn't mean it the way it sounded. I stayed quiet until she ran out of air. Then I told her what my line looked like. I would not fund contempt. I would not buy a chair at a table that shoved me away. I would not apologize for raising Leo in peace. She was quiet for a long time. I could hear someone washing dishes on her end, the clink of plates like a metronome. I'll think about it, she said finally and hung up. I put the phone down and set 2 clean plates on the counter, just to see them there, ready. Evening slid in blue, and the house sealed itself against the cold with small wooden sounds. I bathed Leo and read him a chapter about a lighthouse keeper who never missed a night. When he slept, I walked through our rooms again, kitchen, living room, the small hallway with a nail I keep meaning to pull. I felt the steady rise and fall of this ordinary life. Tomorrow would be Thanksgiving. The guest list was short, 2 names long and perfect. I had a fridge full of food bought with dollars, a friend in Chicago who would send flowers because she believed in us, a map of Europe that reminded me the shore is not the end of the world, and a house in Denver that knew every step I had taken to get here. The list was made. The line was drawn. And for the first time all week, I slept like a woman who had chosen her own table. Thanksgiving morning came cold and bright, the kind of light that makes the wood grain on the floor look like a small river. I woke before Leo and padded through the house, touching the frames on the hallway wall as if they were handrails. The kettle sighed, and the first spoon of coffee sounded like a bell in the quiet kitchen. I set the turkey on the counter, patted it dry, and whispered, "We're okay." The map of Europe watched from the mantel while Denver stretched awake outside. This was America, my country and my house, and today I would keep it warm. I lined up the ingredients we'd bought with $138.44 and smiled at the neat order of it. Potatoes, cranberries, butter, cream, flour, a small pyramid of apples for a crumble, cinnamon that smelled like a story I had heard before. I slid the turkey into the oven, salted like snow. While it roasted, I mixed dough for rolls and set them near the window to rise, pale moons under a towel. Leo came in rubbing his eyes and asked, "Is it time for pie yet?" I told him we had a few miles to go, then poured him cereal and a cup of milk that made a little white mustache above his lip. At 10, a delivery driver knocked. The box held Naomi's flowers, sunflowers and pale roses, shaped like a bright, forgiving sun. Tucked into the stems was a note in her round handwriting. A vote, not a payment. Love from Chicago. A small card showed she had covered $50. I slid the card into my pocket and felt something steady there, like a coin that could not be spent. I put the flowers in a jar and set them in the center of the table, where light would find them. The tablecloth I'd found for $16 at the thrift store looked clean and brave beneath them, its tiny stitched squares like quiet applause. By noon the house smelled like butter and thyme. The rolls had puffed, the cranberry sauce shone, the turkey skin crackled with promise. I set 2 plates and 2 forks and 2 cups. I added 1 more plate at the edge, just in case, not as a door left wide, but as a window cracked for air. Mrs. Ellis from next door knocked and handed over a pan of cornbread. "For your feast," she said. I remember my first Thanksgiving alone after my divorce. I was fine and you are fine. She patted my shoulder and left. I set her cornbread on the counter, like a gift on an altar, and felt the house agree. We ate at 1. Leo declared the mashed potatoes clouds and the turkey good like a sandwich, but better. We clinked our water glasses and named our thanks. I said I was thankful for heat and work and the strength to say no. He said he was thankful for pie and our house, and that the rolls made crumbs that looked like stars. After we cleared the plates, I cut the crumble and watched sugar turn into glitter on the knife. My phone buzzed against the windowsill. It was an email from Molly. The subject line only said, "I'm sorry." I read it once, slowly. She wrote that Dad had been cruel, that she had been cowardly, that Ben had been loud when he should have been quiet. She said the hall in Cleveland had found another family for the date and refunded most of the money. Only a $200 fee kept back. She said she had told Dad that a woman who pays her bills and raises her child with love is not a disgrace. Not in America, not anywhere. She didn't ask for money. She asked to talk. I felt my throat tighten and loosen, like a fist learning to be a hand. I wrote back at the table we chose. I told her I loved her, and that I still held my line. I said she could visit next month if she came as my sister and not as Dad's echo. I told her there was a spare plate waiting. Not today, but soon, when the words matched the walk. I hit send and set the phone face down. Outside, the sky had the clear blue of a new page. Inside, the house clicked and settled, full of heat and the hum of a good day. I looked at the map of Europe, then at the window, then at Leo licking a spoon clean. This was our feast, bought in dollars, softened by flowers, guarded by a quiet door. We were not missing. We were found,